Alright YouTube, it's time for the Occult video 123. Hierarchies are not authentic occultism. Something that people often forget when they talk about all these like secret orders, and so sort of like the Crowley spin-off stuff, or the Church of Satan, which doesn't have anything to do with occultism, or some of these like satanic movements that do. You've got like, here's the high priest and priestess, and here is the priest and priestess, and these are the adepts, and here are your praetorians, and there's your grand poobah, or something like that. And the reason for this system can be twofold. These hierarchies spring up first because of the success, honestly, of sort of the gentlemen's societies and things like the clan, the Masons, stuff like that, that are always in such a situation. Their general success in times leading up to sort of the occult renaissance of the Victorian and Edwardian era convinced a lot of people, I guess, that this was just the way things worked. And that's the way people thought at the time that a lot of these orders sprang into existence, or the basis from which later they would come sprang into existence. Has to do with the idea of there has to be somebody in command at the top, or a group, and then there have to be, various rungs of little people, essentially. The Masons work that way again, and many others. The other is if you've set it up as a money-making scheme. Scientology does this as well. Then you arrange people into degrees, so they pay their like basic fee to get in. They get to the lowest level, and then they subscribe to some doctrine, they learn some things, they give more money potentially, and then they get to a different level. It's not always quite that clear cut, but in order to rise up through the ranks, you have to spend enough time to have spent, again, some money, which is usually getting taken by some temple prelate or something like that. I generally eschew the notion that any specific hierarchy is necessary within the occult. This is the way, whenever I see this within a religion, I typically spurn that religion. Christianity is much the same way. So you have sort of like the Godhead, the Creator, and then you have like the Christ child sort of stuff, the Savior, the various pawns of this Godhead, which sometimes are the same being, but kind of not physically connected to it, but kind of are. It gets a little bit confusing. You have to delve into whether you're a Trinitarian or not, or something like that. And then you have like the various saints, or church leaders, or greater figures within Christendom, or within Judaism for the Old Testament. The Jews are very much arranged into a hierarchy as well. That's where that comes from in Christianity. And in paganism. Paganism influencing them. It comes from Rome, largely, and some of the Roman cults. That was a very hierarchical society as well. Well, there's the emperor, and here's the priesthood and the praetorians and so forth, and these people there's the peasants, and here's the sort of upper crust, the aristocratic class, and stuff like that. Hinduism arose the same way. They have the primordial caste system, of course, and so their deities are arranged into these sort of groupings. Their society is arranged into these groupings. Even their conception, this offshoot of Buddhism, the idea of here's the Buddhas, the Bodhisattva, and then there's humans, and then animals, and then goes on down to the realm of the hungry ghosts, and sort of the demonic realm goes all the way up to, true like paradise situation. I generally ignore this. I don't believe in such things. It's better to be an individual. That way you can free your mind of all of the guilt and fear. You can take what training you'd wish, study what doctrines you'd like, analyze them yourself. And people that are led, in my opinion, people that are led by others within the occult will never achieve anything of particular greatness, generally speaking, until they free themselves of it. They become some heretic or something, they devise a new doctrine, all of a sudden they're well known, and they get their own adherents. People, likewise, who seek to lead others don't accomplish very much. Typically it corrupts them. They end up in it for the money or the fame or something like that. People that are more individualistic, that just sort of do what they want to do, they study what they want to study, often have a greater understanding of the occult or the spiritual in a general sense than people that stick to any specific dogma. This would be my problem with many neo-pagan groups. That is, they come from, like, you'd have one, it's Norse origin, another its origin is in ancient Greek religion, or Tuscany or something like that. and they study those materials, and they rarely study anything outside of it because it can challenge their worldview. They've got an echo chamber light going on. And so they limit themselves in the same sense that a lamestream religion would. The Christians would say, well, the Bible is the end-all be-all. The Muslims would say the Quran is the end-all be-all. The Jews would say the Talmud is and the Torah are the end-all be-all, and so forth. And you have this replicated in all of these spiritual groups. I prefer comparative religion as far as my study. I'm going to study, I've got a copy of the Book of Alawite. Now, this doesn't mean I'm becoming an Alawite. It means I'm interested in reading about their doctrine, or the Kebra Nagast from Ethiopia, or any of these other works. Works from Mithraism, works from Zoroastrianism, works from Hinduism, Christianity. It doesn't really matter, so long as it's interesting to study. There's something worthwhile perhaps there. You have to delve into it and decide that for yourself. But the thing is, when you end up in one of these groups that's arranged into hierarchies, typically you're not encouraged to do so. If these people were truly wise, if they were truly leaders in a spiritual sense, and not a religious sense, and those two are totally different things, what they'd be encouraging is for their adherents to study as much as possible about as many things as possible, not even just strictly within the realm of spirituality. Science can be guilty of this as well. Within science, there's no attempt made to tell people that they should study superstitions or religious history or mysticism, even if just from a skeptical standpoint. Well, yeah, you should study this so you can debate these people more effectively. And they end up holding themselves back as a result of that. Religion is more guilty of it, though, generally speaking. It's like modern politics. And you look at Mike Pence, he says, oh, the Bible should be taught in science class, you know, creationism. That would be fine, except that you're not teaching other creation myths, and let's face it, for the most part, we can determine that they're mythological, they're not real. If you were doing it in a comparative sense, then you'd be encouraging people to study as well the idea of the world arising on the back of a turtle, the idea that it's held up by Atlas and things like that. But those aren't accepted by the culture as much. The going mainstream religious force believes that the world was created by Jehovah or some other name for this deity. And I disagree with that as well. I don't have a problem with people thinking that. I certainly don't have a problem with people studying the doctrines, or the dogma, rather, that espouse these beliefs. But at the same time, let's be comparative in our studies. People should study literally everything that they can get a hold of. Anything that remotely interests them, they should delve into as deeply as they have a mind to. Holding yourself back because you're part of a group where some leader is telling you to study something else that might honestly not even be as interesting, it's dumb, honestly. You should go wherever your mind leads you. And it is your mind, let's face it, as a vessel doing so. It's your own intellectual capabilities that will allow you over time with the proper training, and it's really rather simplistic. You just have to have an open mind for the most part, to analyze as much as possible, to read books, preferably physical books, not like fucking ebooks. Yeah, there's a place for that. There are huge archives online. That's great. If you can get physical copies, it's something a little bit more tangible, and you hold it in your hand, and if your computer gets fucked, it's not gone forever or something like that, unless you backed it up. That's just my own thoughts about it. People shouldn't be looking really for spiritual leaders. They should be trying to be leaders in and of themselves. Not trying to lead others, that's corruption. Not trying to be led, that's cowardice. You should lead yourself, blaze your own trail, as it were. It leads you deep within the realm of literature especially. And it's a good thing. It's good for your mentality. Even if you are a complete atheist, you have no spiritual beliefs, you expunge theism completely, you hate religion, you're like totally anti-religious, at the very least you should still be reading these things. It's not going to do you any harm to learn what other people have believed, do believe, and perhaps will believe in the future, if only from the perspective, again, of being able to argue against these mentalities. It's like back when I was an atheist, my biggest piece of advice to other atheists was read the Bible, because you're going to encounter a lot of people who argue on a religious basis against non-believers, and yet they themselves have only a limited understanding of the Bible. Perhaps if you can eclipse their understanding of it from an academic standpoint, you can make more headway. A lot of them do this, some of them don't. But it's still sound advice. You've got to know, at the very least, you've got to know your enemy. So I don't encourage anyone to join any group. It's like with Satanism. I've said Satanism can be a stepping stone to other things, or it can simply be used as a psychological operation to clear guilt and fear from you. It's positive in that manner. But I never told people join the Church of Satan, because the Church of Satan at its core is a money-making operation. It's a business. It's a corporate entity. It's not a spiritual movement in any real sense. It hasn't been since LaVey died. Anton LaVey was sort of a real-life troll. He was talented, not in some ways people give him credit for. He was talented in music. He was certainly well-spoken and an interesting character. Gilmore doesn't share these qualities. Gilmore just sort of sits there and does nothing for the most part. Peggy Nadramia and all of these others. So that's really my beef with them. They're a hierarchical organization where there is at least a mock-up of having master and servant sort of relationships. And I don't think that that's spiritually positive, regardless of what it's used for. Even if the person at the top is honestly trying to help others, if they make a mistake, then it's a mistake for more than just themselves. So I generally reject the very notion. That's about all. Peace out.